Monsieur Anber.
Monsieur Cassava. Ça va bien, mon ami?
Yeah, I'm doing it. It seems like it's been a while we've done this, even though it's only been a week. We had Scully on last week, of course, to talk about all the Canelo follow-ups after the big victory against Billy Joe Saunders in front of a Cowboys stadium. And how are you doing this evening? We see a little bit of the Joe Louis, and again, one of your personal favorites of all time, right?
Yeah, and in honor of the heavyweight division that's been in the news this week.
It hasn't ever been. So once again, thank you for tuning in to another edition here of Calling Russ Anber. Last week was really the Canelo fight that we had focus on. This week, we're going to be touching on the heavyweight news in a matter of moments because it was crazy, Russ. And also, we'll touch with Josh Taylor's fight against Jose Ramirez to unify the junior welterweight division. An excellent fight, but is it getting enough attention? We'll talk about that a bit later, and we'll recap some of the action that happened on Showtime in the junior featherweight division over the past weekend. We'll get to that later, but let's talk about the heavyweight division. Russ, you mentioned it, you teased it, but look at last week at this time, we thought maybe it looks like Fury and Joshua are finally going to meet. There's common ground and agreement after all the back and forth.
Correct.
It'll take place in August 14th in Saudi Arabia. Next thing you know, we completely forgot that Deontay Wilder, who had claimed on an Instagram video months and months ago that he was going to get his rematch, his third fight against Tyson Fury, but the first one since, of course, the loss to Fury, a convincing loss that is in the second fight. And then we kind of laughed it off and we forgot about Deontay Wilder, although there was videos of him training and reemerging. Out of nowhere this week, Wilder wins the case of getting the immediate rematch against Tyson Fury. It's ruled by an arbitrator. If Fury is to fight Deontay Wilder, he has to do so by the end of September. No chance of that happening, of course, if Fury fights Joshua in August. So Fury, Wilder end up fighting for a third time, or it's going to happen in late July, according to this now, as we record on Thursday night. It's July 24th in Vegas, and Joshua will move on to his mandatory, the fighter you work with, Usyk. My first question with all this dilemma and this drama, we're not surprised, are we, first of all, in boxing? And is this good overall or bad for, how much of a bad move is this for the sport of boxing? Let me put it that way.
Okay, reserve the question for a second. Ask it to me again later.
All right.
Because I kind of want to ask you maybe something, because there's one thing in all of this that has me confused. We were talking that Joshua and Fury was going to be maybe the biggest fight in boxing history, if not maybe the biggest fight in the heavyweight division, right?
Correct.
So much so that, we had to get Saudi princes to call Fury to guarantee him that the money was going to be there, that all this stuff was in place. This wasn't a local club show in the basement of a church that we're putting together, right? Like this
you think this would have been discussed before actually agreeing that there's a possibility that Wilder's going to emerge out of nowhere?
I'm just wondering, doesn't that seem like an important pawn in the game right now, that there's a court case? You're negotiating a fight for big money, making promises to big people who want to bring big fights and who are going on your word that you can deliver this product. And let's face it, when you tender something like that, you're not only going after one guy, right? There's probably a few bidders, few options, a few potential investors who want to do this. I'm just wondering, how does something like this get overlooked, Matt? And I know this is the in-depth of boxing you can't answer, but
it didn't necessarily get overlooked. According to what Fury's camp was saying, is that they told the Joshua camp that this was happening, but apparently Joshua's side is saying, you told us this was going to be a non-issue, that it was a done deal, that the arbitrator would rule the other way and say, sorry, Wilder, you missed your chance on the rematch, move on to something else. And that's where the dispute went, is that Fury's camp says, no, you knew this was always a possibility. It was out of our hands. And the Fury-Joshua back and forth on Twitter, I don't know if you saw it, Russ, but it got ugly and vicious. Of course, Joshua doesn't speak much, especially in the last few years on social media. Said, Fury, you're a fraud. You've exposed yourself for the fraud you are. And Fury saying, listen, buddy, come meet me right away. We'll fight bare knuckle for $20 million of my own money. And then, a guy kind of ugly and ridiculous. And ultimately, some people think this will lead to an even bigger fight if they do face each other. But I just can't help but think that this is, again, another opportunity of it made the most sense. You talked that you think it would, at one point you thought it would be an even bigger fight than Mayweather-Pacquiao possibly. And now we're back to this again, that only in boxing it seems these things happen, right?
I'm just wondering, let's forget about the fighters in this, because this goes beyond them. But the lawyers for each of the sides, the lawyer that was defending Fury's position, the legal side of this, the people defending Wilder's position, the people protecting, let's say, Eddie Hearn's interest in all of this. There had to be legal advice that they seeked out to say, or that they sought, if you will, to say, okay, guys, listen, this thing is not a slam dunk. This could very well go the other way. They've got a good case, or forget it. They don't have a good case. It's not like, I'm just wondering, like, this looked like it really went off the mark. Like they were really wrong, thinking that this was, like you said, a slam dunk, that it was going to go away with Wilder. And not only did it not, it turned out strong for Wilder. You know, like it was a convincing arbitrary decision that was made. The arbitrator made a strong decision saying that he would be irreparably damaged. To make that kind of an assumption is a huge, huge case put forth by the Wilder camp. Like that's really big to have done that, Matt.
Well, I know, but I mean, as far as your fans, this is legal stuff, and I understand that it's somewhat interesting. There's a side of interest there, but ultimately, what does it matter? Like it's not going to happen, that fight now. And I think fans want to look at it more from a perspective of, is this something that could even put the fight in jeopardy if ever happening because of the bad blood of this negotiation? And possibly, is Fury a slam dunk to beat Wilder? Because Wilder now, he seems rejuvenated in the videos. He's been with a new trainer, Malik Scott, but he hasn't fought anybody since the loss to Fury. So I don't know what to make of all of this.
Look, you can never say anything is a sure bet to beat. Fury's a sure bet. It's boxing, right? In any weight class, one punch can turn it around, and we know that Wilder possesses. That is his thing. He possesses that punch. I mean, I don't expect that we're going to see a unanimous decision win for Deontay Wilder because Fury comes up totally flat and doesn't throw any punches. I don't think that's going to happen. But, a knockout could potentially occur. And if it does, it likely could happen from the side of Wilder. There's no guarantee. Can the fight happen? This whole thing has me perplexed. And I know you think it's just legalese, but this is really important. This affected a lot of people for not only $10. This affected right. Millions and millions of dollars. I guess the guy who comes out of this the best is Usyk, right? Like he gets the shot that he is rightfully earned, and was willing to step aside for a unification fight. He was willing to step aside and take that. So, he probably comes out of this the best. For Wilder, I'm not sure that that's the move. Now, again, we're sitting here as armchair quarterbacks.
Wait. In your case, Russ, I mean, having worked with Wilder, especially, and just in work with fighters in general, your armchair with a bit of inside knowledge and a bit of it's not like we're just looking at this. Have never been involved in situations where you're coming from a point of view that has an opinion on this that's justified.
Okay, I can have an opinion, but the inner workings of the business of boxing, not the fight, who will win, how did he train, how did he look, how's his left hook, how's his jabs work, the inner workings of the millions and millions of dollars involved. There are things that are privy to only a few people inside. When you hear people say they know about this and you should have done this and TV should have done that, you don't know. You don't know all the negotiations and stuff that go on. You don't know everything that's involved in this. But from the outside, and with the limited access to information that we have based on what went on, my thought is, if Wilder takes the rematch with Fury, the best he can do is become WBC heavyweight champion of the world again. Right. That's the best he can do. It in no way guarantees him the Joshua fight, and Joshua doesn't have to fight him and is under no obligation to fight him.
Correct.
Okay. If you waited a couple of months and took a reasonable step aside money, and I mean very reasonable step aside money, gives you more time to work with new trainer, get yourself ready, focus on what you want to do, and you're guaranteed to fight for the undisputed title, not just a portion of it, the undisputed title, that's worth way more than a rematch with Fury.
But I don't know if he could have received that guarantee from Joshua's side.
Now, that's what I mean about the inner workings. I think you could have received it because They offered him step aside money, and he asked for a ridiculous amount, which everybody refused to.
Yeah, but I'll say this: Wilder, again, with that video he posted in the winter, with the piano playing in the background and accusing Fury of cheating and saying that he would have his vengeance. He seems to really be on principle, Wilder, here, that he wanted this Fury fight more than anything, even if it meant less of a payday than taking step aside money and possibly facing the winner. So again, right or wrong on that business decision, maybe he'll regret it, but in his mind, he really seems to think that like that second fight was a mirage. He thinks in his head, it looks like if he's being truthful, he believes he's something with Spike, and he blames the the corner Breland, which was ridiculous, but it's still in his mind. That's what he thinks. He thinks Fury, did something with the gloves again in the first fight and possibly even in the second. So all of these things psychologically, he's looking at this as if this is going to be his vengeance, and he's ready for this, and he's locked in. I don't know if it's going to matter or not ultimately, but this is what he wanted, and he got what he wanted.
Matthew, listen, you're absolutely right. He got what he wanted. That's what he wanted, and the case was stronger, I guess, than they believed. I'm shocked that we were this close to having a fight put together between Joshua and Fury, and something like this comes out of left field, which we knew was in court. You know it's in court. The arbitrators got it, and you're going along like everybody was booking flights to Saudi Arabia. Like it was done. The training camps are started. They're finding people to spar with, like it's ready to go. And something like this happens. And look, you might be right. Wilder might be focused solely on this. This is why I'm saying about the inner workings. When you get together with the team and you put all the options on the table and say, okay, what is it that we do here? What's our move? How are we playing this chessboard? How are we moving this? And maybe this is what you come up with. Just quickly, the way we would analyze it, looking at it, I'm saying, I want to fight. I'm gonna collect a couple of million just to step aside and do nothing. That's going to more than pay for my training camp and get me ready. I'm going to be ready for that. I'm going to go there. I'm going to watch the fight up close. I'm going to watch both of them fight each other because they're two tall guys fighting each other. So it's going to give me a good perspective on how I want to handle either one of these guys, what I see in either one of them. I want to see what they've got and sit back and say, I got the next one. And the next time I step in the ring, and you could have even put Wilder in just a tune-up fight, let him get his feet back under him, new trainer, get everything going, working in the corner, right? Not being under any kind of that big mega pressure, because now this suddenly puts Malik Scott under huge pressure, to perform and deliver in a very short period of time, has to turn around, a massive turnaround from what was the first fight. Maybe it's possible. Malik is a really, he's a smart boxing guy, right? He gets it. He understands the importance of learning and of coaching. Like I've always liked that approach with Malik, but it puts pressure on him. Yeah. And I'm thinking, what if you sat back and said, well, let's wait. The next time I step in the ring, or that my next big fight is going to be by December, by September, by November, and I'm going to fight for the undisputed title. My value has just skyrocketed. Now, that's just us talking here. Maybe there's so much more, but I don't know.
What about the fact, Wilder a little bit, of course, having been in camp with him?
A lot of it.
Exactly. Okay, do you think he really believes what he's saying about the accusations he's making towards Fury, or is he kind of doing this to psych himself up and not, wanting to face the fact that, listen, I lost to a better guy that night?
Well, when you say you're psyching yourself up, you're not psyching yourself up with falsehoods. You're psyching yourself up with what you believe to be true. So if he is saying that to believe it to be true, I think he legitimately believes it to be true. Yeah, I don't think I don't think it's just a front.
I think a lot of people are dismissing Wilder in this third fight, and I think that's a mistake, because if you look at how much time has changed, the first time Fury and Wilder get together, it was supposed to be an annihilation for Wilder, right? Fury had no chance, completely out of shape, just coming back here. It makes no sense. And then he shocked everybody by having a draw. Many thought Fury won. He did enough, but of course, the 12th round, a great knockdown by Wilder puts spices in the rematch. A rematch appears. It's kind of like a 50-50 fight. You have some people who think Wilder's going to finish the job. Some people think Fury's continuing to improve and mentally is stronger and will defeat Wilder. The big fight rematch becomes a one-sided fight for Fury. And now entering the third fight with, it's a short preparation for Fury in terms of the Wilder camp. He was already in preparation for a fight. I don't know if that makes a difference. Like you as a trainer, you think the fact that he has to change opponents at this stage changes anything, or because it's an opponent he already knows and it's the heavyweight division, he has plenty of time to get focused and try to defeat a Wilder who's been preparing for Fury only in his mind and in camp for weeks and weeks on end. Like I think this third fight, even though everybody thinks Fury's going to do the same as he did in the rematch, even maybe better, I think Wilder could be a dangerous fight again if Fury underestimates him.
It's always going to be a danger when you underestimate an opponent, isn't it, Matt? And we know that Wilder has that potential power, which is why he was so upset with Breland. You know, I had a chance. I could have come back. You know, I had a one-punch knockout chance. That always exists. The two fights, you know, I think Wilder probably won 2 rounds of the 12 plus 7 or whatever that they fought, of the 19 rounds that they fought. He won 2 rounds, you know, and both of them were big knockdowns, you know, were knockdowns in rounds that he had to win, right? He had to win the rounds, he had to get the knockdowns. So I think for Fury, this is going to be disappointing because I think he had his sights and his trash talking and his focus has been on Joshua and Eddie Hearn. You know, he's a dosser, he's this, he's that. You know, now he's got to change his rhetoric and build up the mental preparation for somebody like Wilder, where Wilder has stayed focused on Fury. It's an important factor. Is it enough? I don't know, but it's an important factor that this turmoil has now split Fury's attention somewhat. He has to kind of regather himself a little bit. We might be over-analyzing with the impact that this has, because in terms of preparation, and I don't know if he has started sparring or whatnot, he was preparing to fight a big, tall right-hander. So I don't think there was any difference in your preparation, really, of what you were going to get ready to do against Joshua that you're going to do against Wilder. I really don't think. It's not like you went from a right-hander to a southpaw, you know? Right. Joshua, it changes something. You know,
Joshua have more time, though, in fairness, but
he has time. Correct. I was just going to say, but he has time.
Okay. Do you think Fury can do anything? Like, is this a no-win fight for him, though? Or you think if he goes out there and does what he did in the rematch against Wilder, even better, then, you know, it just boosts him up? Because I just don't see how he can do anything better in this third fight against Wilder than he did in the rematch.
It was good. It was good enough. And if he does that good, it'll be fine. You know, it'll be fine. You know, I think there was a massive improvement from the first fight to the second fight. You know, in the little adjust. You don't agree?
No, I'm saying, yeah, absolutely. There's a tremendous improvement. He just his confidence in his being back in shape and consistently in the gym made a difference.
Yeah, it made a difference. And the way he dominated, he not only dominated with his boxing skills like he did in the first fight, but he also dominated physically. He moved the monster that is Wilder. You know, he moved the monster that is Wilder, which was something that a lot of guys have failed in doing. The only one who kind of came close to doing it and couldn't sustain it really was Luis Ortiz, where he combined, you know, good boxing skill, a southpaw stance, and, you know, he was hitting Wilder, hurting Wilder, you know, imposing himself on Wilder until he got nailed, and then again got nailed in the rematch and got stopped. That did not happen with Fury. And Wilder, the moment he wasn't able to land and hurt the opponent, the game plan crumbled. You know, like things didn't happen the way they're supposed to happen. And now you're getting hit with more shots. You know, you're getting tagged, you're missing where you want to hit, and you're paying for the mistakes that you made, and you're paying for your misses. But look, you can never, ever, at this level, at a world-class level, for somebody whose only loss is once, you know, to Fury, in which Breland likely saved him mentally and physically, you know, to be ready to be able to come back and have this rematch with a potential to win. Because if Fury is allowed to finish that job, if Fury, you know, creates that boom, timber knockout, you know, where there is no fight, and he is in obscurity having to build himself back up. So Breland played a great role in securing this rematch with Fury.
It's a good point, but do you think it's a mistake for Wilder to jump right back in against Fury? Or do you think, you know what, you have nothing to lose at this point? Because if he does lose against Fury again, the climb to get back to that level might be very difficult.
It might be. It depends. It depends how he loses. But this is all the parts of why I'm saying, like, is that the fight you wanted to take? Do you know? Normally, when you come off of a loss like that, often they'll put you back in for a tune-up fight. Get your confidence back in, boom, and you're back fighting. You get your confidence back, and you're right back in there. Hard to say. He might not be the kind of guy who needs it or wants it. But this all surrounds the same question that I'm saying. Why didn't he wait? Why didn't he take the step aside, wait for the winner to fight for the undisputed? These are all things, unfortunately, people can speculate on. They can offer opinion on, like we're doing here, but they don't know for sure. They don't know the real inner workings of what the guy wants in his heart. And sometimes the right business decision might go against what the fighter wants. And sometimes you've got to leave the business decision on the table and go with what the fighter wants, because that ultimately is the most important thing. So these are the little bit of the inner workings we don't know. Right. So even if we think they're wrong, if the fighter believes it to be right, it's right. I always thought that Wilder's people were wrong in accepting the first time the offer was made for him to fight Joshua, where Eddie Hearn put like $13.5 million on the table, which was in fact 10 times more than he had ever been paid for a fight up until that point. And they thought that wasn't enough money, even though it was 10 times what they paid. And I always said, if you believed you could beat him, if you think you could hit him and knock him out, take the $13.5 million and go.
People might forget that was before he actually ended up fighting Fury. At the time, he was supposed to try and get Joshua. That's the fight fans wanted to see.
Correct.
And then Fury kind of snuck his way into it with being the former retired heavyweight champion that people kind of dismiss. And the rest is history, as they say. So, Joshua now, from his perspective, you get Usyk, the mandatory. He knew, at some point he would probably have to face Usyk. It's a difficult and a completely different style matchup. Some people, though, think it's better for Joshua because he was the underdog against Fury, and they thought Fury was going to be a very difficult matchup for him physically. Usyk presents different styles, problems for Joshua. I don't know what to make of it, other than I think it's an excellent opportunity for Usyk to kind of come in and impress a lot of people here, because against Chisora, granted, he didn't look great. He had some moments trying to get into the heavyweight division, a heavyweight frame, but he has a lot of time to prepare. And I don't think Joshua has the style that's going to really bother Usyk early on. But maybe I'm wrong, but I think this is a great opportunity for Usyk to step in here and cause a lot of, problems for Joshua early on.
It's another, you've thrown another twig into the spokes right now, that this could completely derail how close we came to have a unified heavyweight and undisputed heavyweight champion. Because should Usyk, and don't think he doesn't have the ability to do this, he's a gifted, talented fighter who sets an alarming rate for a heavyweight. He's been a winner his whole life. This is not going to, I don't expect this to be an easy fight for anybody, but you can't turn around and say that, Joshua's going to win that, no problem. No, you can't say that. That's not fair. That's not a fair statement to make. Should Usyk win that fight, I mean, this then just sends the division into turmoil again, because now Wilder will make defenses on his side. Usyk will make defenses on his side. There could be potential rematches. If Joshua, I'm sure, would want to assign to have a rematch with Usyk. I don't know what the legalities are in
right, when it's a mandatory, right? If it's a mandatory, can you force a rematch against a mandatory?
Listen, it's part of the negotiation. You can't force it. No, you can't force it. But you put it in, and there's a price for that, right? There's a price for that. So, that could have, what happens also, I'll ask you this, hypothetically, this contract now that they're saying, okay, Joshua and Fury and Wilder are going to fight again. Now Fury is putting his title on the line. Does he get a rematch clause the way Wilder had the rematch clause?
I mean, it's going to be interesting. I think more and more, by the time even this is posted tomorrow afternoon, there might be some more information as to the specifics of the contract negotiations, which is why I kind of sometimes want to steer clear of that. A lot of it can be updated and changed rapidly. But if Usyk against Joshua, what's interesting as well is that Usyk, the boxing hardcore fans know about his success at the cruiserweight, and they know about his southpaw volume punching style. But He also has a great personality that a lot of people, I think, are going to first, some casual boxing fans are going to discover, especially with the return of the fans in attendance. Or thinking about possibly doing this at a Wembley Stadium. It could be a massive promotional event, a massive attended event, and will be watched, of course, as well. So when you look at it from Usyk's perspective, he might be a winner regardless of the result. But I want to ask you, Russ, as somebody who works in Usyk's camp, you're not, of course, the lead guy, but if you sit back at home and visualize an Usyk-Joshua fight, like what comes to mind for you to think Usyk has the best chances of winning that fight? Like,
I'm
what's
not
the fight
sure.
you see?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's fair for me to say that right now. That's something that probably has to stay.
I had to give it a shot, Russ.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good shot, but I've got to keep that as the inner workings. I don't want to pronounce myself on that. I don't want to show anything or tilt my hand in any way. All I can tell you is that, Usyk's credentials speak for themselves. He has strength and weaknesses like every human does, like every fighter does, as does Anthony Joshua have his strength and weaknesses. They're both charismatic. I think this is a massive fight in terms of charisma and respect that will be between the two fighters.
Yeah, it's a different promotional now than Joshua Fury.
Correct.
It's a much different tone.
And they're pros. I respect this. They're real. They ply their trade. They've worked hard, both of them, to get where they are today. So, but it's going to be a great night, and I'm looking forward. And I love Anthony. He's a great guy, but I love working with Usyk, and I'll tell you what, it's going to be what an electric night that's going to be.
Okay, let me put it this way then. Do you think people who are looking at Usyk's last fight against Chisora and say, based on that performance, and they think, well, then there's no chance he can beat Joshua if that's the Usyk who comes to the ring, the same who fought Chisora? Do you think that's a mistake people are doing if they just base it off that one performance?
I don't think it's only a mistake in Usyk. In any fight, you can't just pick out one fight and say, he fought like that. If he fights like that against me, he's going to win. You can't. So I don't believe that they're just going to look at the Chisora fight. Did they see something? They might have seen something. They might, we can do this. But, you could turn around and say the same thing about Anthony Joshua against Ruiz. Say, you saw something there. That was a bad night. If he shows up like that, I'm going to beat him. You can't just go on the one performance. So they can look at it. Everyone can look at it. And the casual fan is going to say, Usyk's not big enough. He's not. Okay, you can look at that. Fine. But you know what? All those people, they're going to be watching. They'll be watching.
and that's the one thing which was fun about the heavyweight division the last few years is that it got back to this. It stole the spotlight when it was the big names, the Wilder, the Furies, the Joshuas. They've, granted and warranted attention, and it's been there. And we're hopefully, these matchups are going to attract attention, but it's not the heavyweight championship undisputed titles that were on the line. Correct. And again, whoever wins these fights, it's going to be difficult to think that it's right away. The next one is going to be for the 4 unified belts. Like that to me it always seems to be a long shot right now. If you look at the history of boxing, when it comes to the biggest fights, you're better off thinking there's less chance of it happening than it coming to fruition.
History might look back at this and say, my God, look how close we came to having an undisputed when we could go another long time before we have one. So, I think the thing, Matthew, in any division that garnishes interest, there has to be competitiveness. When Fury came back and put that performance up against Wilder, all of a sudden there was interest because now you couldn't pick the winner anymore. Before you were picking the winner, it was easy. Yeah, the odds-on favorite was going to win, and he won. And he always did it in the way the script. I'm sorry?
You're talking about Klitschko here?
No, I'm in any division when you have someone who dominates, right, and the guy who is expected to win the way the experts say he will win and how it'll go. When that happens all the time and there's no competition, there's no interest in the division because you know who's going to win. As soon as you have someone who's vulnerable, and this was one of the reasons why back in the day, when Oscar and Roy were coming up, the popularity that Oscar had was because he was vulnerable. There was a certain humanity and feeling to him that he potentially could lose, and we're not sure if he's going to win. And then he wins, and oh my God, it's great. With Roy, it was Roy's going to win. Roy's going to win. Roy's going to win.
He was still popular, though.
Of course, still popular, but there was that dominance that Roy had. Didn't have that you didn't have that B-side interest, you know, where the
Right.
guy, oh man, this guy could be giving him a shot. And now with Joshua losing to Ruiz and Wilder losing to Fury, now the vulnerability is gone. You know, it's gone. And with Fury, don't forget, and with Fury being down against Wilder, you know,
That's right.
all these things happened, made it that, oh shit, now we don't know who's going to win. We're not sure. And that's, I think, what makes competition great,
Yep.
whether it's in individual sports or team sports. When you think you're picking the winner, but you're just not sure, that's what makes sports interesting.
No, 100%. 100%. And one fight is going to be definitely interesting because you talk about the competitiveness, and it will lead me to the undisputed junior welterweight titles on the line between Josh Taylor and Jose Ramirez this weekend. And it's a fight, Russ, that of course many people might want to put a wager on. And if they would be in the business of trying to get some money here, try to put a bet, well, we got a place for you, right? We got bet99.com.
Bet99. That's
Our
it.
sponsor show here, title sponsor show, Canada's newest online sports book and casino. Be sure to check out the player props, the bet builder, and their risk-free live bet bonuses. If you use the code BOXING99, Mr. Anber, do you remember what happens?
Absolutely. If you use Boxing99, they will match your bet up to $600. So if you were to bet $600 and your pony came in, they would double your winnings.
That's right. So it's 100%. It's a sports welcome offer. It's 100% deposit up to $600. So use the code BOXING99 on bet99.com. The Ramirez-Taylor fight. Taylor's actually favored right now because of the southpaw style. He's 17-0, 13 knockouts. Ramirez has more fights under his belt. But going into it, it's the southpaw versus the aggressive, orthodox Ramirez. There's a lot of interest for it, but I think I find it's more the hardcore boxing fans. I don't know how much yet these two personalities are well known outside of the day-to-day followers of the sport compared to even a Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence. I think, you know, it's an undisputed title that is not going to garner as much interest as you would like with the NBA playoffs going on in the United States, the hockey playoffs here in Canada. There's just seems to me like it's going to be one of those fights where you're going to try and convince your fans, hey, I know you like boxing a little bit, tune into this fight because you're going to see two guys who are going to be very competitive. Taylor against Regis Prograis was a great fight. Ramirez against Maurice Hooker was an excellent fight when he got that knockout win. Like, I'm excited to see it because, again, there's a doubt. I'm not quite sure who's going to win it, but I do think Ramirez has the style to cause a lot more problem for Josh Taylor than anybody Taylor's faced before.
I agree. Those fast hands, he's well trained. You know, Garcia Roberts a great trainer. You know, you got to give him that. He's a real student of the game.
He's a boxing guy. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
He's a real boxing guy, right?
Of course, he's a real boxing guy. And when he gets the pony, when he gets the right horse, he can make the adjustments he needs to be made. And if that guy can follow and execute what Garcia wants, Garcia knows how to find a way to win. This leads right into exactly what I was saying earlier. This is what makes sports great. This is what makes boxing great. You can think that, oh, the odds-on favorite might be this guy, but you're not sure. You're really not sure. You know, this is not Canelo now, where you're an act of God will have to happen for Canelo to lose, you know, against certain opponents, right? An act of God, like it's impossible.
Like when he fought Yildirim, for example, as a mandatory.
Correct. But when you're talking, because the levels are so different, but this is not. These are both guys on the same level, a very high level, but on the same level. This is an exciting fight. Southpaw, orthodox, the fast hands of Ramirez, who believes in himself, who has a chin, who believes he can come back to win. You know, he throws explosive punches. You know, one hurt, he could be right on you right away. One shot. Right. This is what makes it interesting. So I think this is just a fantastic matchup. And you're right, for whatever reason, and I think sometimes it's, where do you fit into the ebb and flow of the stars of boxing, you know, and at what time, not on your talent. That's sometimes a little sad that what happens in boxing, that the fights that garner the attention or the big fights that happen to make it out of the niche and into the mainstream of sport and whatnot, sometimes, you know, it's not because you're good. It's not always dependent on your talent.
I would say it's even, unfortunately, very infrequently dependent on that alone.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe that too. Yeah,
think about Rigondeaux when you think about talent, right? And it's not just going to lead to that many interests. You have to have more than just talent.
Yeah, but Rigondeaux, you know, Rigondeaux had the talent. Rigondeaux had the talent, and then he wouldn't deliver what the fans wanted. That's not the case of a Ramirez or a Taylor. They deliver what the fans want. So they have all going for them what should make them a star, and that there should be a lot of interest in this fight. But for some reason, the attention as they're coming along has just kind of like, you know, the attention's been elsewhere while they're winning, you know, like it hasn't been the spotlight on them. And then they won with the spotlight on them. It was on an undercard. It was on a lower viewed card. You know, it wasn't the main thing. And that's not their fault. And it happens. And now you've got two great fighters fighting each other. And I hope people tune in, you know, because their skill level, the competitiveness between the two of them deserves that people should watch this. It's a great, great matchup. I don't know who's going to win. I really don't. And even if I made a prediction or told you who to bet on Bet99, it's not sure. This to me is a pick'em fight. Maybe you know. Do you know what the betting odds are now? Do you know?
I'll look it up. I'll look it up in a second as to what the odds are at the moment. I know
to me it's pick'em right now.
At one point, I know Taylor was a slight favorite. Because I think people also look at the common opponent in Victor Postal, and Taylor won more impressively against Postal than Ramirez did. But again, we've seen this constantly in boxing. You can't just look at who they face as common opponents and make a determination based on that result. And Taylor and Ramirez, I think that fight, the way I see it, is that it's going to be elite level boxing with moments of big time action. I don't expect it to be a war. I don't expect it to be a slugfest, but I think it's going to be elite boxing, rounds that are difficult to score. And then if Ramirez gets on the inside and forces a fight, then the action will pick up at times.
I disagree. I'll disagree with you. I expect it to be everything you say, all the skill set that you're describing, but I expect it to be action-packed. I think if one guy starts to do something, I think the other guy's going to raise the game. If this guy starts throwing a lot of punches, the other one's going to try to throw more. I think it's going to end up being a good fight. It's going to be an action-packed fight that each guy is going to try.
But really, you think? But I would love to see that. But do you think Taylor is more as a disadvantage if it does become action-packed? I think that would be the type of fight Ramirez wants. No, if Taylor can stay on the outside with his tall jab, his counter-punching ability, he'll have more of an advantage there.
Of course. So if he does that, if he's able to do that, that means Ramirez would have failed in his execution, and it could end up being a wide points victory in a non-spectacular fight, which then the odds makers should have made Taylor, you know, a 4-1 favorite, a 3-1 favorite.
He's a minus 256 favorite as of Thursday night.
I don't understand what that means. Was it 2-1, 3-1?
I mean, looking at it that way, he's not he's a bit more than a 2-1 favorite.
Not quite 3-1, right?
No, exactly.
2.5 to 1 favorite. Okay,
so, yeah, you can look at it that way.
For him to do what you said, Ramirez is going to have not executed. But if Ramirez succeeds in being what I think is still a pick'em fight, if he succeeds in getting inside, in making it the fight he wants it to be, now Taylor's got to fight harder to keep him on the outside. When he fights harder, Ramirez is going to work more to get on the inside. That's how I could see it potentially escalating into an action-packed fight. If it's a fight where Taylor just stays on the outside, boxes him, and he gets really no opposition, you know, no resistance, and he's able to keep him on the outside, and Ramirez doesn't deliver and ends up looking like the 3-1 favorite that he is, then you're right. We don't have a fight. But I don't think it's that fight. I think it could be a closer fight and should be a closer fight. And I don't think that Robert Garcia is going to allow Ramirez just to sit outside and you know, get picked apart. And
no, that's not. I'm not saying that what's going to happen. I think it's just that it's going to be more like they're going to. Ramirez might be patient at first to try to time him. I don't think he's necessarily going to go out slugging right away.
I didn't say he would. I didn't say he'd go out slugging.
Like say like the Virgil Ortiz fight against Hooker weeks ago, which was all action from the get-go. Like, it's not what I'm expecting, but expecting elite level boxing, and it should get the attention more so than some of these other events we've been seeing the last few weeks that I don't want to go into with the YouTubers, but it's not going to be the case. And the junior welterweight division, you know what it looks like to me, Russ? I was thinking about it. There's been, of course, some great fights at 140 that really garnered massive attention. And in the past, I think Alexis Arguello against Aaron Pryor was one of those at 140. But in the last few years in boxing, it seems like the 140 is to get, you know, you built your reputation, you built your top fights at 140 to an extent, but they get to the popularity of the welterweight division. And that's when you start seeing the money, the pay-per-views, and the welterweight is a sexy division, but the junior welterweight is where the actual best fight the best. Is just lesser profile, because once they get to 147, then they become more difficult to deal with. They don't really want to have the fights. But if you look at it the last 10 years or so, 140 is kind of like the hardcore fans are following it, but the sexiness is at 147.
The 140-pound division success is dependent on a lightweight moving up to that weight class and challenging for that title. That's what has made it the beautiful thing. Or a 140 goes up to welterweight. Now suddenly they pay attention to him.
Terence Crawford is exactly as he won all the belts at 140 with much less fanfare than what he has now.
Exactly, because welterweight is a prestigious, historic category. It's something special. 140 has always been like a little bit of a no man's land. It's been like it's kind of there in between the lightweight division where you think of the greats of boxing history, including Duran, etc.
Shane Mosley.
I'm sorry?
Shane Mosley. Even Mayweather had some great times at 135.
40 kind of is like a pit stop. It's like a truck stop on the way.
But in the meantime, it delivers more big fights for the fans. I'm saying, not necessarily the mainstream fans, but
Aaron Pryor was a great fighter. Fought his whole career as a lightweight. Couldn't get a shot. Finally got to fight Cervantes at 140 to win the title. Defended the title a few times to little or no fanfare, really, because all the action was happening with Leonard in the welterweight division and Duran, who moved up to the welterweight division. Nothing happened, no one really paid attention. You saw him on weekend fights on TV, but it wasn't the blockbusters we were accustomed to in the welterweight division. But when Arguello, who was 135-pound champion, moved up, the fact that it was Arguello moving up was what made the interest, not the 140 division. So unfortunately, it's one of those like divisions that kind of sits there. But when you get the right fights, you can get great action. It's a great weight class. So listen, I think there's this has potential to be a great fight. Ramirez fought Hooker, didn't he?
That's right, and he knocked him out, and it was really an impressive performance. It was kind of like they had organized some tournament where Ramirez and Progress, Taylor defeated Progress. I forget if it was called the World Series. They got that big trophy. The same Usyk won at 200 pounds.
Super Series.
Yeah. So then Taylor defeated Progress. Progress since then obviously has done good things. But yeah, so it was Ramirez against Hooker that kind of, I thought, really that was the performance that Ramirez kind of steamrolled Hooker in impressive fashion.
And Hooker was a tall guy, tried to keep him on the outside.
Not a southpaw, though.
But not a southpaw. Tried to keep him on the outside, So that's why I think, Ramirez is something special. I think he's a good fighter, and I think Taylor knows this, and I think it's going to make for a heck of a fight. That's what I think. I think we're going to get. You can't not have a good fight when you have when two good guys are fighting each other. It's very hard. You end up with a stink.
Well, speaking of that, last weekend, and we'll end on this, even though sometimes we start with the weekend fights, but the Luis Nery fight against Brendan Figueroa, where Nery looks like he was on his way to a knockout win early on. Figueroa, with the massive body shots, ends up having his best win of his career. Danny Roman at 122 pounds on the undercard, I thought looked very sharp. I really like his two-hand combination punching. But we were talking a little bit this week, Russ, and there's something that kind of drawed your attention from that card at 122 pounds that went outside of just the people fighting inside the ring.
I really enjoyed listening to, before the fight, his analysis of the fight, his presence at the fight, and his in the ring appearance after the fight was Stephen Fulton. He really showed what class, what articulation, class, championship caliber person he is to build up a fight. You could see that there was a respect there for both guys. He understands the game that this is and the danger that it could be. He understands what it means to rise up and become a champion, and the way he conducted himself. I mean, I can't wait for this fight. And you know what? Brandon Figueroa as well, spoke eloquently. He was courageous. He fought. He's got that certain cockiness to him, that good look that good look, handsome appeal, you know, and he made me remind me a little bit of Ryan Garcia, the way he looks, you know,
Right?
like
Okay.
got those boyish good looks, you know, that wow, this kid's a fighter. Wow. And he fought hard, you know.
Yep.
He didn't fight like a pretty boy, you know, he fought hard. And Neary tried to break him up early, and the kid stayed in there. You know, he really stayed in there with him. And you started to see, wow, at that weight, you wouldn't think that coming up a couple of pounds in weight class is a big difference. But boy, at those weights, it makes a hell of a difference. And you could see the size difference between Figueroa and Neary. And eventually you started saying, yo, this kid's not backing down. You know, Neary's trying to take it to him and bust him up and back him up, and he couldn't do it. And you go, whoa, if he can't do it, this is going to be a long night. And the, you know, body shot that landed with that delayed reaction, you know, everyone was calling it a solar plexus shot. It wasn't a solar plexus shot. It was a liver shot that got him. It was a liver shot.
Can you just, and I like that you bring this up, the solar plexus and liver's a bit more behind the solar plexus, if I recall correctly. The solar plexus
is like below the heart. It's right below the heart, in the center. In the center of your sternum, like right there. You know, that's where the solar plexus would be. That's the liver is right here.
That's
you know,
that's the shot you like when you look at a lot of the highlight clips of Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. Trying going around the guard of that right elbow.
That's right.
And
correct.
And also you have to be careful if you go a little bit too far behind. It's an illegal shot.
Yeah, no, no.
Point.
Right
but
on.
You hit it at the sweet spot. It's a deliberate, you know, completely debilitating. I have a hard time speaking this evening. I don't know if it's
debilitating. Yes,
it's the evening. It seems like some of these words here. Got to drink more tea or something, but not coming out as I would like them this evening. But the solar plexus shot is something I think you see sometimes more with like a nice little right uppercut on the inside, or if you remember here for Canadian fans, Lucien Boutte from the southpaw position when he threw the left uppercut.
No, Lucien Boutte was a liver shot again. It was a liver shot because he was a southpaw.
Right.
He was able to drive that shot, that uppercut into the liver, the same place that a right-hander delivers the left hook to the body. The same kind of shot. It's the same area. From a southpaw stance, he brings it right underneath. It was a liver shot that did. Solar plexus are not, you don't see a lot of KOs with a solar plexus shot. Every now and then it happens, and sometimes it happens on a straight right hand into the body. That happened. Boom, oh, it lands right and ready to feel it. You see guys great. But the liver shot paralyzes you. Like it just, you're on the floor completely knowing everything that's going on around you. Your head is clear, but you're paralyzed. And the left hook to the body has to be one of the most debilitating. All punches hurt, but the left hook to the body. You take the same two punches on both sides of your body. The one on your right side, you get hit on your right side, is hurts 5 times as much as the one on the left side.
I'm trying to think of the best. Well, we'd have to think about at one point when we get Scully or some of these historians on.
Mickey Ward had oh my God, his left hook to the body. You could, if you watch the Gatti fight, Gatti, after taking all those vicious shots, gets hit with the body shot, and his face is in so much pain from that shot. The others didn't bother him. That one, he gets hit with 7 other shots to the head, and he doesn't care. He's protecting his body, and he's taking the shots to the head. That's how debilitating that shot is. It's a favorite punch of mine. It's a fantastic weapon in boxing when used correctly, and it can be a thing of beauty. And southpaws have a great advantage at throwing it too.
And I remember being ringside for in Foxwoods for Triple G against Matthew Macklin, and he knocked him out in the third, fourth round with that liver shot. And like you said, really, it's one of the toughest punches. Was that? But I forget. Would you say it's liver? There was Bernard when he knocked down Oscar De La Hoya, or was that more of a?
What does it say in the Constitution of the United States? I plead the fifth.
You want to say that there might have been a bit of exaggeration on somebody's part there?
I've never seen somebody who's been crushed with a body. There's a certain way
somebody goes down.
Your body goes into paralysis when you're hit with that kind of shot. Go and watch it. Go watch the great knockouts, including Neary getting stopped. Go watch Boutte's. Go watch the great knockouts of a left hook to the liver, okay? And tell me any time someone has the strength to be so upset that he's pounding the canvas when he gets hit with that shot.
That's a good point. Yeah, I remember the video. So people want to look it up on YouTube. You'll see De La Hoya kind of pounding both fists. And there was a lot at that time, even when he fought Felix Sturm before trying to move up the middleweight. I don't think he was necessarily De La Hoya's best outside the ring of what was going on in his best training camps. And that might have had something to do with it as well. Before we finish this conversation, Mr. Anber, because you briefly touched on it with Mickey Ward, it was the anniversary this week of their first fight of what became the legendary trilogy of Gatti-Ward. All these years later, now the first fight was in 2002, so we're approaching the 20-year mark. Do you think it will still live as in infamy for the history of boxing? Is there any way? I think now it's become even more. It seems like over time, a mythical fight, a mythical matchup, and maybe it has something to do with the early passing of Arturo Gatti. But it just seems to me like that fight, it will always be looked at as, even though people forget, these fighters were not world champions at the time they fought the first time. They had been, in the case of Arturo, but it was a fight that was supposed to be kind of like a stay busy action fight, and ended up being one of the biggest trilogies of all time.
I'm going to make a mistake in the actual verbatim of what I'm trying to say here.
Okay.
But I think one of the greatest calls for a boxing, there's been great calls in boxing history that live as infamously as the fight itself. And when Jim Lampley said something to the effect of, we thought we might be getting a fight of the year. We had no idea we might be getting the fight of the century.
That's right.
And I think when you look back at that and realize, what those two guys left in the ring that night, I think it plays well to what Scully said last week, that we've been spoiled by those types of performances, whether it be from them or from Matthew Saad Muhammad or Evander Holyfield, where a couple of humans were able to do superhuman things and take unbelievable, inhumane amount of punishment and still come back to fight and try and win. We were spoiled by these people. You see, not the human body can't usually take that kind of stuff. So
do you have any memories of that fight, Russ? Like, do you have vivid memories of where you were for the first Gatti-Ward fight?
I was at home. I watched it at home on HBO, and I was standing. I said, this is unbelievable. This is like, I'm thinking, this can't be what I'm watching. And it's one of those fights that as a purist, you say, where's the defense? Like, what's going on? Like, it hurt me to see that, right, to take that kind of punishment. And I remember, Arturo controlling, boxing early, he's doing his thing, Bing Ming looking good under Buddy McGirt, bang, bang, he's boxing. And all of a sudden it started to come back and he got drawn into that trench warfare, and Mickey makes you fight. Mickey made you fight, and boy, when you got into that, it was two guys. It wasn't really, it wasn't a fight necessarily of skill as much as it was of will. And you just couldn't imagine that they could keep reaching down, not clinching, holding on, I remember when after Mickey had hurt Arturo and had him gone, crumbled him with that body shot, beat him with headshots, got so tired from hitting him, he had to clinch to hold on because he had no more strength left. He really thought he was going to get Arturo out of there, and he couldn't, and Arturo came back. And I remember another call of the fight, and I hope I'm not confusing, but I'm pretty sure it was the first one when Lampley said, you can stop it now, Frank. You can stop it now, Frank. And he was almost egging late great referee Frank Cappuccino to move in and stop the fight. And boy, it like Scully said, it's we've been spoiled by these guys putting up a performance like this. And it goes to show you, and I remember back in those days how powerful HBO was. And when people used to talk about, which belts of the sanctioning bodies was the most valuable, WBC, WBA, WBO, IBF, which was the better of it. And it was so powerful at the time that people said, the most important belt is the HBO belt, when you were on HBO. And that fight proved it, because I'm sure there are not a lot of fights that was on main HBO when a title wasn't involved or a champion wasn't involved. This was like a 10-round, I don't want to say club fight, but it was a 10-round, main event at a fight club. Like this is what it was. It was a 10-rounder between two guys, former champion. and they put on the fight of the century in terms of what the human body and the human spirit had to go through.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. You couldn't have written this was what Stallone wrote when everyone said, that's not really boxing. And this is what it was. You know, they say Stallone was inspired by Wepner going
Chuck
15
Wepner.
rounds with Ali. But the violence that Stallone portrayed in that first fight, you know, we all said, a little Hollywood,
Of course.
exaggeration.
Especially for heavyweights, but
yeah, that doesn't happen. These guys surpassed that. It was exactly that for real. Exactly that for real. You wrote that as a Hollywood script, and these guys delivered on that unbelievable inhumanity that took place, like that violence that took place in the ring.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing as in boxing does well is that it remembers its great fighters. We talk historically more so than a lot of other sports I find, especially in this day and age. Maybe outside of sometimes baseball, but there's few sports that carry a rich history of people enjoying to watch old fights and revisit these memories as much as boxing does. And I think it's a good thing. It's one of the few, very positive spins that we have compared to other sports where sometimes it's not the best comparisons.
I hate to say this again, but allow me to disagree with you, or just at least take the other side.
100% allowed. It's better actually if you do it sometimes.
Let me take the other side of that. Boxing remembers its great fights. Boxing sometimes has a habit of forgetting its fighters and taking care of its fighters. And the fans forget the fighters. They remember the fight, and they'll give you an RIP when you're dead, and they'll say on this day, great fight, so-and-so. But when fighters are in trouble and when they're in need and whatnot, we seem to forget about them. We don't take care of them like we should after they deliver what they deliver for your entertainment and the punishment that they put their body through. Sometimes we forget that and don't take care of them the way we should and protect them the way we should. So we remember, boxing remembers the great fights, and we have this, this fantasy world of, wow, these guys were great, and we remember them at their very best, but we don't care for them when they're when those days have passed, and we just pass them off. And sometimes they go unnoticed, and people say, who's he? They don't recognize him anymore. They don't care. No one wants to take a picture with him anymore. And that was a guy that was on top of the world before this fighter was born, and they forget about him. And to me, that's always going to be the most hurtful thing of this sport, is that we forget. And one of my finest, and I want to say proudest, but one moment that will stay with me, and we can talk to Scully about this next time we have him on. I was in Stockton, California when Arthur Beterbiev fought, when he fought Hot Rod. And in Stockton, California is the famed Fat City Boxing Club run by Yaqui Lopez.
Yeah.
Yaqui Lopez was a perennial light heavyweight murderous contender in a division of King Kongs and Godzillas. Okay. I mean, it was a division where anybody in the top 10, 15, you were in a war for your life. You couldn't find an easy win on your way to the title. And great fight. We talked about how great the light heavyweight division was, and he's there in Stockton. He's the king of Stockton. He's the best fighter to ever come out of Stockton, California. And there was a show going on, and it was in the light heavyweight division. And how could Yaqui not be part of this promotion? So Scully and I and Bruce Trampler went to the gym. No, Scully and I went to his gym, and we invited him to the weigh-in. When he got there, Top Rank greeted him and treated him with all kinds of respect and introduced him, and they introduced him at the fights. That boxing needs more of that. I don't understand how we watch all these fights and we don't have the introduction at ringside of great fighters who are there. This should be done more. They should be allowed to hear the applause again.
Great point. I'll leave that note. It's almost been the hour mark again, Mr. Anber. So we're going to call it an evening. Again, thank you everybody for your comments, your tweets. More and more people come to me and say, right, I listened to the podcast with you and Russ, and we appreciate that feedback and try to get it on the audio platforms as much as we can going forward. So, Mr. Anber, I thought it was a great ending monologue there again. And I will wish you a good rest of the week. And we're getting more to a position at one point, and we may be able to do this face to face. We may not have to do this remotely anymore.
That would be very nice if we could do that. And you know what? I'm enjoying this, Matt. And it's like when you call me on the phone and we start talking. This is kind of the same thing when we talk on the phone, except without the profanity. You know, like
well, that's the genesis of this idea, right? It was, let's have these conversations recorded, and I think that's what we're trying to do. And hopefully people enjoy them, and I think they do. And again, we never take that for granted. Just guys who enjoy the sport, love the sport, and want to talk and educate people if we can at certain moments. So thank you very much, Russ Anber. Have a good night, and we'll talk soon, of course.
Talk to you soon, buddy.